Hello there, and welcome to our webinar, Why Your Customers Can't Find What They're Looking For. A great search experience is critical for e-commerce success. In fact, according to a survey of more than 1,000 U.S. shoppers, 80% say that accuracy and convenience are the most important aspects of online shopping. Unfortunately, in that same survey, 60% said they disliked their search experiences. My name is Diane Burley. I'm the VP of Content for Lucidworks. And today's webinar will be a conversation between two e-commerce search experts, Peter Kieran, CEO of Cirrus 10, and my Lucidworks colleague, Laja Marla, Director of Product for Fusion AI. Today, we're going to review why shoppers are so aggravated, how a solid foundation of a search engine can remedy many of those things, and how you can combine the analytics data that you're already collecting with machine learning to drive next-level customer experience. First, some housekeeping. The lines are muted, but please send in your questions. We'll answer them as you send them in. There's a chat box on the lower left of your screen. So let's find out why customers are so aggravated and what you can do about it. Joining me this morning from his office in Seattle is Peter Kieran, CEO of Cirrus 10, a boutique systems integrator for helping major e-commerce sites improve their digital experiences. Hey, Peter, how are you?
Hey, I'm great, Diane.
Great. I mentioned that people are tremendously frustrated. Nearly two-thirds are saying that they're having to sift through irrelevant results. And nearly half are saying it just takes way too long to find what they want. Does this surprise you?
Yeah, not at all. Search is, and always has been, really hard. You know, there are a million different ways that people can tell you what they want when they enter an e-commerce website. And it's really hard to predict what kind of language they're going to use and in what combinations. You also have the problem of data quality in almost every e-commerce company. You combine those things with the fact that our expectations are set by, Alexa and Siri and Google and Amazon. So, search is really tough.
Can you give some examples?
Yeah, so let's go look at a couple of examples. So one of the absolute classics is shorts. It's a simple term, and everybody on the phone here knows what I'm looking for when I search for shorts. But on this site, we see that 5 of the 6 products here are actually tops. So we've got an assortment of men's and women's tops, and we've got 1 pair of shorts in the upper left-hand corner. And of course, the reason that this is happening is that these are short-sleeved shirts. So the word short, which is the singular form, and shorts, the plural form, have a common root. And the search engine doesn't know the difference between short when it's used as an adjective and shorts, which we know to be a noun. Now, this is a classic. You can go to just about any apparel website and have a look, and you'll find this problem over and over and over again. Here on the Outlook site, you can see that they understand that the person searching for shorts is, in fact, looking for short pants, and there you have it, short pants showing up first, which is what you want.
And you have another example too.
Yeah, so we can go all day with the examples. This one's a little bit tougher and kind of gets at the root of kind of the deeper problem. So here I've searched for leopard print. I saw my friend wearing a leopard print top or a jacket or something. I know that she shops on Urban Outfitters, so I want to go and find that. I searched for leopard print, and over here on the left, you can see I'm getting prints. But that is not what I was looking for, right? I was looking for a top. And so, the interesting thing, I think, if you search around on this website is I suspect what they've done is they've said, we want leopard and animal to be treated as equivalents so that if somebody searches for, I don't know what, zebra print or something like that, and we don't have it, then it might show a tiger print or a leopard print, type garment instead. But the confusion between the word print when it refers to wall art and print when it refers to patterns on a garment has combined with that equivalency to create this kind of disappointing experience. So it's not just the word shorts. There are lots and lots of words that are used in multiple different ways. A great example you can imagine. What if you searched for long sleeve short dress? There are you could find products that are short sleeved and long, or dress shirts, and all of those different words can be used in different combinations. It can mean totally different things. So it's really tough.
All right. So you gave us a fauna example. I think you've got a flora one coming up now.
Yeah. So let's walk through this one slowly. So suppose, like in the last example, I saw somebody wearing a floral top, or I noticed that it's a trend, and I go to, in this case, the O'Neill site, and I search for floral. And what I get back are floral things, but it's not what I had in mind. I wanted a top. So that's fair enough. So I do another search. I search for floral tops. Well, look, it's the same swim stuff again. And if I look closely at the titles of the names of these products, you can see that they have the word top in them. So it's a bralette top or a floral tri-top. And so I say, okay, I again give the website the benefit of the doubt and say, oh, I understand it thinks I mean that kind of a top. That's not the kind of a top that I want. Let me search again. So I'm going to search now for floral blouse so that there's no ambiguity at all about what I'm looking for. And again, we get the swim products. So that will lead somebody to believe that they only have swimwear. They don't have the kind of floral trend that I see my friends wearing. And so now, if we go to the browse, you'll see that actually not only do they have floral tops, they have a whole category of floral tops, and we can scroll for rows and rows and rows. And so, I think the problem here, and I don't know O'Neill or how this website is built, but there's sometimes a tendency for certain kinds of machine learning approaches to overemphasize certain products because they are important or popular. And it's certainly understandable. O'Neill is a swimwear brand, so you would tend to expect swim. But I think that O'Neill would want somebody searching for floral blouse to see this assortment and not the swim assortment.
All right. Now we're going to look at something else, and not really the same type of ambiguity, but probably more of an issue of what do you want presented to the customer.
Yeah, so this gets at the merchandising point again. So, suppose that I want to buy a gold bracelet, and I go to the Cartier website, and I search it up here for a gold bracelet, and you see these jewelry items that come back. That's great. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for jewelry. And I click on, let's say, the first one, which looks like a panther. And that's going to bring up if you could advance, that'll bring up an image of this Cartier panther. And notice that I have to request the price. And I think it's likely that this is probably a lot more than $10,000, and almost certainly something I'm not going to put my MasterCard up for and just buy online. Yet it's the first product that comes back, and you look at all the other products in that first row, probably all of those are in the same kind of category. So on the other hand, you might be led to believe that this is the only kind of sort of high-end stuff that is available on the Cartier website. But if you advance, you'll see that actually they have products that are more affordable and that you could certainly buy with a credit card. So I think the thing that's interesting about this is that a lot of times companies with strong brand identities like Cartier has, kind of serve two masters in the e-commerce website. On the one hand, they want to support the brand identity and make sure that people understand that they have, high jewelry options, and they want people to feel bought in to that legacy of high-end jewelry. But at the same time, it's a business, and they need to sell product. And this Trinity bracelet is a kind of a product that I'm sure they sell in large numbers as compared to the Panther. And so I think a lot of times the search technology forces the merchandiser to make a decision. Do I want to support the brand, or do I want to sell stuff? And that's an empty choice to have to make. You want to do both. And you want the search algorithms to be able to, either blend things together or give them complete control of the experience.
I was thinking about it when you were showing these other examples about how language is so dynamic. And now with Twitter, everybody has to come up with something in a very short, fuzzy, quip off the tongue type of way. So odd spellings are becoming the norm. And then, of course, the merchandisers want to show how hip and trendy they are, so they start adopting some of these, and that's causing a different set of problems, isn't it?
Yeah, and this is a classic problem. You never know how somebody is going to ask for a product or spell something. I went to the Neiman Marcus site. I searched for California King, and it knew what I wanted. It showed me California King sheets. I tried to throw it. I searched for California King fitted sheets and was able to find that. I searched for Cal King and found some California King products. But if I searched for Cali King, I wasn't able to find it. It said we can't find any results for that, and it shows me I think wall art and perfume and some other stuff. So this kind of gets at the frustration that search merchandisers face. It just never ends. There are so many different ways that people will ask for something. You just can't keep up with it. The tail is endlessly long, and just impossible to keep up with. But if you have a good sort of more algorithmic data-based approach, you can ultimately arrive at a good search for just about anything that people would look for.
These examples have all been B2C sites. Are you seeing the same problem, or are there the same concerns for B2B? I know we have quite a few B2B people on listening right now.
Yeah, it's funny because sometimes B2C people, when you give them B2B examples, their eyes kind of glaze over, and vice versa when you show B2B people, tops and bracelets and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, a lot of the problems are the same. This is an example which feels really B2B, but you would have this exact same problem in a B2C scenario, and I'll explain that in a second. So the phone the phone I'm talking to you on right now, it may not make it through this phone call because it's old and it's dying. So I flipped it over and looked up what it is. It's a SoundPoint IP 331. So I want to replace this phone, and I want to get exactly the one because I just want it to plug in and work, and I don't want to have to bother the IT folks and all that. So I go to CDW, a place where you buy this kind of thing. I search for SoundPoint 331. And it actually has some inkling of what I'm looking for, except that it's showing me accessories for the SoundPoint 331. So a power adapter, a power supply, this kind of thing. I'm pretty sure that's not the problem with my phone. I need to actually replace the phone. So my inclination as a customer might be to try harder and try to actually find this thing. Or I might just say, the heck with it, I'm going to go over to eBay and buy a refurbished Polycom phone. And that would be a real shame, because if you browse the site and advance this slide, they have Polycom 201s and 101s or whatever the model number is, which is a perfect replacement for this old model that Polycom doesn't make anymore. And in order to do this kind of thing, a business user has to set up all kinds of equivalency rules and maintain massive spreadsheets, or spend an eternity clicking around or writing rules in a PIM, and it's just too much. The brands, especially, you can imagine the assortment that CDW has. They have so many products. You could never keep up with all the different ways that, say, Polycom is changing, much less all the different brands that they've got. And it's the same thing for B2C. Companies have collections of shorts and tops and jackets and things, and those collection names change, but the basic purpose that they serve stays the same. So if somebody searches for an old collection name, gets 0 results when in fact there's a new collection that functions in the same way as the old one. So this is a classic B2B problem, really hard problem to solve. A lot of manual work involved with it, but definitely exists in B2C as well.
Yeah. Are they really doing that much, maintaining spreadsheets, and who typically does this type of work? How are they trying to solve all these problems that you've mentioned today?
Yeah, good question. I mean, it's all over the map. There are people trying to solve the data problems first and, get their data sorted out. There might be, spreadsheets or PIMs or, routines that, automatically identify synonyms for the different brand names and different models and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, whether you're talking about synonym and thesaurus entries or business rules or mapping, there is manual work, and it is not only something that takes a long time to do, but once you've put in a manual curation rule, you have to tend to it. They don't live forever, and you don't have an unlimited amount of space to enter these rules. So you don't just pay for it at the time you put the rule in. You pay for it, the maintenance of it, as time moves forward. It's just an unsustainable, painful process that pretty much every e-commerce site is struggling with.
So hang tight. I want to thank you so much for introducing all of this to us. I want to circle back to you with some questions at the end. And in fact, if you have questions for Peter or Laza, please make sure that you use the chat in the lower left. Right now, I want to introduce my colleague, Laza Marla. She is the Director of Product Development for e-commerce here at Lucidworks. Hey, Laza, how are you?
Hey, Diane. I'm good. How are you?
Awesome. So Peter's outlined some of the common miscommunications that are going on between customers and sites. And like Peter, you're out there looking at how to remedy the situation and looking at all the architectures of these different folks that you've been working with. What are you seeing?
Yeah, so I think Peter pinpointed a lot of really, really common problems that I see when I'm out talking to some e-commerce customers. And I think that the root cause for a lot of these problems can essentially be broken down into one of 2 buckets. So either we're looking at fissures or problems in how our customers have architected their search itself, or fissures in how they're utilizing AI to solve some of these problems. And essentially those 2 categories can be boiled down into issues of data quality and issues of signal infrastructure. So the first line of defense against some of these problems is that search infrastructural piece, essentially to make sure that your catalog is well indexed with a strong and deep taxonomy, and also that you're matching that taxonomy properly to the kinds of queries that you're actually getting in your environment. So for example, the first example that Peter spoke about, that noun-adjective relationship for short, essentially what that is not parsing nouns and adjectives correctly in the incoming query, and then not matching them properly with the nouns and adjectives in your index. Similarly, that leopard print example, the word leopard print certainly exists in the index or the categories for Urban Outfitters, but we're not able to match that correctly because of a fundamental problem with how the search infrastructure has been architected. Now, as you mentioned on the previous slide, manually tuning to try and solve all of these problems that Peter outlined is totally prohibitive and doesn't scale at all. But there are some things that a human should curate to hit kind of a baseline. And you can employ some strategies in your search infrastructural piece, i.e. curating your initial set of synonyms, modifying your initial NLP and NER strategies, making sure your initial catalog and descriptions are really well structured, and then manually hitting some baseline numbers for your initial relevance ranking. Those aspects are still manually curated, and they're absolutely critical to getting started with solving some of the problems that Peter outlined. Now, while you need some of those manual elements to get started, we at Lucidworks are strong believers in using AI for customizability, personalization, recommendations, and much more to provide your users a more rich, complete, and reactive search experience. And so after a lot of our customers reach that search baseline, they run into problems like the later problems that Peter was describing, i.e. that Cali King problem, where people are searching in a certain way that, a merchandiser maybe doesn't have the time to keep up with, doesn't have the time to sit there and what are all of the possible synonyms in our environment. And so we strive to provide AI that can actually take care of some of those tasks for you. We've spent a lot of time developing features and products to help you close some of these fissures and use signals and AI or really advanced machine learning to effectively prevent or solve all the problems that Peter has mentioned.
So when you said signals just now, what are you referring to?
Sure. So signals are basically the foundational blocks, building blocks of AI in Fusion. Fusion automatically collects and collates signals, which are basically pieces of user interaction on a number of axes for your use. And they can include any kind of user interaction experience. On this slide, you can see some examples of the kinds of things our customers actually record, but this is by no means a comprehensive list, and the more you can record, we certainly take the position, the more you can record, the more you can do with your signal. We have customers using signals for recommendations, user segmentation, personalization, and rules, but almost all of our customers begin by using signals to improve search relevance. And I think that's a super powerful out-of-the-box implementation that comes with Fusion. For example, we had recently had an engagement with O'Reilly, and we had less than a week to increase their conversion rate. And simply turning on this signals infrastructure within Fusion saw slightly upwards of a 5% increase in their conversion rate just out of the box.
I did get a question, and I think it's a good time to interrupt. The question is, when you're talking about signals, are you talking about them in aggregate or individual users' signals?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And so I think Fusion takes the position that both of those pieces of information are important. The actual individual signal is also really important to aggregate those signals over different verticals. And so by default, Fusion, we collect the kind of individual pieces of interaction data, and then we also ship with a number of aggregation algorithms that help you kind of slice and dice those signals to see the insights that are most valuable to you, i.e. if you want to see how many people are searching for this that clicked on this particular document item, that's a certain kind of aggregation. If you want to see how many people from a certain region are executing a certain kind of search, that's a different kind of aggregation. And so Fusion facilitates both of those processes, and I think both of those are very important. The original individual signals are important because they represent really what your users are doing, and they can contain a lot of nuance about interaction patterns in your environment. That's why it's dangerous not to ever look at those. But the aggregated signals, I think, give you overall movement on your site, which is also very important. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that should answer their question. Thanks.
No problem. So as I was saying, the more signals that you collect, the more you can do with your signals. And Fusion takes all the data that you provide through signals and kind of helps you make some inferences from it, i.e. if a customer marks an article as helpful or if they engage with the article for a certain length of time before leaving the application, we can make certain inferences about the quality of that article or the quality of that document and then boost that page in the results for that combination of keywords and devices. So for example, if I am a user and I come in and I'm looking for leopard print shirts and I execute the query that Peter mentioned earlier, and no one is ever engaging with any of the leopard print physical art, that's a really solid indication coming from your signal that something is wrong with that query and that you need to go in and understand your user's intent or improve those results in some way in order to better accommodate the kinds of things your users actually want to see. So in this way, Fusion is able to provide a far more accurate self-service experience through the kind of wealth of telemetry that we capture and leverage to guide people and give them the most relevant possible search results.
You know, Lasse, before we go forward in describing more how this might work, one of the big fears by merchandisers themselves and really in any industry, right, is how is AI going to come in and impact what they're doing? What should the machine be doing? What will their job now be? And how can AI allow people to do things of higher value and let some of this tedious stuff like maintaining a spreadsheet be handled by a machine? So maybe you could address that a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. So I think that it's really easy to get caught up in this hype of AI and machine learning replacing the idea of a merchandiser. But the great advantage with Fusion and the position we take at Lucidworks is AI is actually really just a tool and part of an ecosystem of tools available to a merchandiser or available to a search engineer to assist them in making the right decision. Really what we want is for AI to become a really informative part of your search ecosystem and not something that's overriding your knowledge. Because as of right now, AI doesn't know as much as you or your merchandiser about a lot of nuances in your catalog, and it doesn't have your intuition. I think that Cartier example that Peter brought up is a really good example of the kind of decision that only a merchandiser can really make, and you don't want to outsource to an AI. Is how much do you want to leverage brand awareness and brand power over, buyability? And depending on the metric you're trying to optimize for, an AI will almost always say, oh, put the things that people are buying at the top. And while that might be a good strategy, that might not represent exactly what you're trying to do or what you're trying to imply to your customers that are on your website. And so it's really critical that we translate your focus from kind of this AI does this one set of tasks and I can eventually replace my merchandiser to actually this more ecosystem, less of a black box kind of approach, where machine learning and AI are actually surfacing new insights to your staff and your search engine, and then you as a merchandiser or search engineer are actually deciding the balance that AI needs to take over the insights that your staff are providing.
So I think we might have lost Lasse for just a second there. This is a good time for a question that just came in anyway. Somebody asked that one issue that she tends to see in her searching is the default or in search. So somebody types in something, and rather it looking at it as an and, it's looking at it as an or. Peter, do you want to address that?
Yeah. So when you or all of the, especially if you have every word that's added, every token that's added to the search. If the default logic is that each of those are independently as important as the other, you over recall products. You bring too much stuff back, and so one of the things that people will sometimes try to do is introduce logic then to say, I know what this person is looking for despite my or logic, and I'm going to try to force the right stuff up to the top of the page. And so now, you may have solved that problem, but you haven't ultimately solved it, because as soon as the person then does a sort by price or, some other kind of a sort, all of a sudden that good logic, goes out the window. So, there are certain scenarios where you want combinations of tokens to be OR'd together. In other cases, you don't, and you want some logic about which tokens to remove. So the person who commented that, Brenda, is absolutely right.
So let's go to the next slide. While Lasse's struggling to get back in, I love technology, don't you, Peter? One of the We're going to talk a little bit now about how Fusion can help facilitate some of the AI search, and what tools does Fusion offer to help facilitate AI in search?
I'm really sorry about that, everybody. Something is going on with my phone, but hopefully that won't happen again. So I think the most common way that our customers get started using signals and AI is to help tune relevancy based on user behavior. And I think there's basically two common strategies here. The first is to use clicks as scaled and weighted boosts. So collating search and click behavior to determine which items are being clicked more frequently for a given search, and then boosting those documents automatically. And then the second strategy that we see most commonly is to use clicks as a discovery tool. So to help users find products, inform systems that can assist other users through personalization and recommendation, and use signals to kind of feed all of those AI processes. These are probably two of the simplest things that you should be doing to allow your user interactions on your website to define relevancy. And you can drive relevancy through user trends and crowdsource from the knowledge of your users in order for them to be able to help each other find the best content on your site.
Can you provide a little bit more detail on how this might work?
Sure. So let's say we get to a certain place with signals, and we have signals informing this baseline. We have some complex algorithms to help you tune your search experiences. I think a lot of the things Peter alluded to can be solved by using something we call query rewriting, wherein we use signals to make the search system smarter. So if we look at this slide, basically what we have is an incoming search, IPDA car doc black. And we see a couple of things wrong with this query, right? This is the kind of query that on a e-commerce website is not likely to produce a solid result because there's a lot of nuance to what the user is actually looking for here. But what our signals algorithms are able, or our query rewriting algorithms, I should say, are able to do is essentially translate this query into something like the outgoing query we see on the right, something much closer to the kind of language that a search system can respond to and provide really good results for. And the way that we do that is kind of through a few different strategies. So here we have a rewrite for a misspelling where IPDA should be rewritten to iPad. We see that the words car doc are actually a phrase, and so they should probably be boosted the same amount. And they're a modifying phrase because they're existing after the noun, and they're a noun phrase existing after the noun. And so that implies a larger boost. And then there's this last modificational adjective, black, which is a color detection that we also probably want to apply a categorical filter to. And so what our AI algorithms are able to do are essentially, by looking at the kinds of documents that users click on for this incoming query and the kinds of refinements that users make to this incoming query, we're able to detect that IPDA to iPad is a rewrite. We're able to detect that the words car doc should exist as a phrase and be boosted. And we're able to know that the word black is a color. And this is all coming from what your users are actually already doing in your system.
Now, and just to clarify, are you creating a log file so that that people know this is a list of synonyms or what have you that people are using? Is this a way to train the people? In other words, just as much as you're training the machine?
Yes, that's exactly right. So I think that speaks to what we were talking about right before I fell off the call, which is that you need to keep a human in the loop at all times. So basically, we've got these insights coming from the machine telling you that IPDA to iPad is a rewrite. And that's something that me as a human being can say, yeah, that makes sense. Or that car doc is a phrase. Yes, that makes sense. But on occasion, the machine will make inferences that are not correct. For example, car doc may not always be a phrase. If you just see the word car in certain queries, you don't always want to associate the word doc with the word car, maybe for your taxonomy. And so what we want to do is make available to the end user basically a way that they can see the outputs of these AI algorithms and then tell the algorithm itself what is correct, what it's doing well, and what it's not doing well. So as I said before, we want our AI to inform you, not dictate your choices. And so essentially we have launched this new product coming out in our upcoming release we're calling Predictive Merchandiser, where you can review the output of these AI-based jobs and then automate the deployment of these query rewrites, these synonyms, these misspellings, these head-tail analyses, and approve and deny each of these rewrites so that your feedback as the expert actually goes into tuning the AI and making it better.
So how does a company use this for experimentation? Peter said up front, you go to the Cartier site, should you be putting that high-value item on the front page, or should you maybe be doing something that is a more popularly priced, or can you do both? Or, where are you finding all that information?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and a key thing that sometimes e-commerce websites are overlooking, in my experience at least, which is that experimentation is the best way to make a data-driven decision. So I, as a human being, certainly have an intuition about, me, I want to maintain the value of the Cartier brand, so I want to keep the expensive items way at the top. But we don't know, is that actually good for your environment, or is that bad? Is that causing people to buy more Cartier? Is that causing the kind of brand awareness that you want? And how do you find those things out? And so what we really encourage here at Lucidworks is that you employ some kind of experimentation framework. Essentially, what an experimentation framework allows you to do is test the strategy, test your intuition, be able to say, hey, I think that this thing is probably true, but I'm not sure, so let me deploy one variant in an experiment to test that against a baseline level of relevance or against a more AI-driven approach. And so essentially, here, again, the AI is collating information about how people are searching using these different strategies and then providing you that information to, again, make an informed decision about which strategy should take precedence over the others.
So what are some of the results that companies have seen if they were to incorporate signals and machine learning on a great search foundation? What is it that somebody could hope to see in terms of lift in business metrics?
Sure, yeah. So we actually run 4 out of the top 5 home improvement retailers in the U.S., but I'm going to highlight this one in particular. This company was an existing Solr user, but they just weren't seeing the gains that they thought were possible with Solr. And by partnering with us, they adopted Fusion, and just by turning on signals, immediately saw an impact in the bottom line. And then we've been working with them more closely to implement some of these more complex signal strategies. So the out-of-the-box signal relevance tuning got them to a certain uplift, but now they're using us with those query rewriting strategies, and they've seen massive increases across the board in almost all of the metrics that they're interested in.
And I think at this point, because we're running a little bit long on time here, why don't you go into really quickly what the Fusion stack is? So for anyone who might be unfamiliar with Lucidworks and how they might be able to see Lucidworks in their technology stack, why don't you go through it a little bit, and then we'll bring Peter back in for a quick question or two.
Sure. So I think that essentially this diagram does a really good job of breaking down how we look at data and our suite of products at Lucidworks. So we can take data coming from any source, so system-generated data, human-generated, that's kind of signals, application-generated, and obviously what's not included here but should be is your catalog, your corpus, all of any data that you would want to index. And we index it into Fusion using what we consider still to be in the domain of AI, i.e. NLP, NER, phrase detection, part-of-speech detection. And so this helps to address some of those problems we had talked about earlier, i.e. how do you know when a noun is a noun? How do you know when something is an exact match for your category? Our AI at this stage is able to accomplish a lot of those tasks. In addition to those AI-related initial data cleaning tasks, we transition the data then into what we call Fusion Server, which is essentially where the search engine lives and allows you to do any custom data processing that you might want. So this allows you a full suite of connectors to be able to add in any external data sources you want. There's various ETL pipelines. There's a SQL engine. This is where our rules engine comes into play for you to be able to issue, banners, redirects, the kinds of things that an AI is never going to be able to know, as well as scheduling and alerting. And then finally, we have this kind of third step to AI before we actually serve the results, which is how do we enrich the incoming queries through that query rewrite process? How do we automate that relevancy component using signals? How do we deploy recommenders? How do we experiment or A/B test in your environment? Obviously, one of the great advantages with Fusion is that it's very extensible, it scales, it has inbuilt security and CDCR. And then this last component on the far right here is Fusion App Studio. So this is essentially our front-end layer where you can create search templates, create beautiful visualizations for your data, be able to kind of complete the loop in the data experience. And so this, through App Studio, you can create these really compelling visualizations to surface a lot of the AI strategies and basic relevancy tuning that you've been able to manage within Fusion.
Awesome, thank you. All right, so we've thrown a lot of information at all of you, and some of you have been asking if we're going to record this session, and we are. So we will be sending that out to you in a couple of days. If you have any questions, now is a good time as we come to a close. You please use it in the bottom left-hand corner, and I will have information in that email, some good follow-up information too about Fusion AI, some trends in e-commerce, and other collateral that you might find interesting. Also, the folks that were on the phone, Peter, Kieran, Lazu, Marla, myself, we're all anxious to help answer any questions that you might feel too shy about or come to later on. I do have a question right now. You were talking about signals. Somebody asked, what kind of data is that? How heavy is that notation when it's coming in?
Sure. Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And we actually don't place a lot of restrictions on what kinds of signal data our customers collect. So we have a recommended set of information that we expect from our customers for some of our aggregations to work out of the box. And that includes stuff like, the incoming query, the document that was clicked on, the document ID that was clicked on, the timestamp for the query incoming. But those are really what we have to form baseline. Anything else that you want to record or anything else that you do record, Fusion can accommodate. So that data for signals can be as rich or as sparse as you want, essentially.
And I would add on to that. I mean, our customers usually are looking for advice for how, because a signal is a broad, to Lassia's point, I mean, it's a broad concept. It could be a lot of different things. But there is a pretty clear set of best practices for where to start. And it's like what Lassia said. What was the person searching for? What products did they click on? Which of those products did they cart? And which of those products did they actually buy? And the good news is that most people's Google Analytics or Site Catalyst, Omniture, or Core Metrics analytics platforms know that. And that stuff can be easily exported and ingested into Fusion. So you already have this information, most likely, you're just, oftentimes not using it.
Peter, another question that just came in is, how much are you seeing a lot of evolution to natural language queries? Are people are consumers tending to want to write things like, I want a floral top, versus writing top, floral, all this parsing of language?
Yeah, I mean, I'm, it's funny because if I tell, Siri or I would say Alexa, I think my speaker is going to turn on in the background, but if I say, I want to play some music on Spotify by this band or whatever, I could use a complete sentence and Alexa would understand what I'm asking it to do. When we look at the top search terms for our customers, and I've seen all of them, we don't really see people doing that much in e-commerce. We still see people just searching for category names and color names and collection names or part numbers or things like that. It's usually one, maybe 2 or 3 tokens at the most. But the thing that I think is an interesting question is it that we've trained our customers not to use sophisticated language because they know we can't handle it on the site? Or is it that consumers just don't use that approach when they shop? And I don't know that we really know the answer to that yet. I think that platforms like Fusion, as they become widely adopted, may point the way on that question, but I'm not sure we know the answer to it fully yet.
Yeah, and I think that's a great. Sorry, just to add on to that really quick. I think that kind of question is a great candidate for experimentation. So what I've found is you tend to get those kinds of natural language queries when your search interface is highly search-centric, i.e. you aren't suggesting a browse-based interface. People tend to search for things in that more NLP style, whereas when you kind of put forth a more browse-based experience, people tend to take on that that browse-based experience into account. And so I think that's a great example of where running an experiment would be really incisive to understanding, how important is it that I have an NLP suite that accommodates this, and are there other ways to maybe go around these kinds of queries?
I'm going to let that be the final word. I want to thank Peter Curran from Cirrus 10, Laza Marla with Lucidworks, and all of you for listening. Well, thank you so much and have a great day.
Bye.
Thank you.